What if some of the most powerful foods ever put under a microscope weren't discovered in a modern laboratory, but written into the pages of the Bible thousands of years ago? Most people walk right past them. We're out here counting calories, chasing the newest supplement, downloading another diet app, and the whole time, the healthiest people who ever lived were eating a handful of simple foods that modern science is now, finally, catching up to. These aren't spiritual symbols. They're foods with real research behind them, foods that studies link to lower inflammation, steadier blood sugar, a healthier heart, and a stronger gut. And today I'm going to walk you through 17 of them, ranked from remarkable to genuinely surprising. Stick around, because number 5 on this list is so well proven that the FDA actually allows an official health claim about it on food labels. Almost no food on earth gets that. And number 17 was the wilderness food of John the Baptist himself. And long before modern medicine, it was used in hospitals to help sick children recover. If you want ancient wisdom backed by modern science every single week, hit that subscribe button right now and ring the bell, because you do not want to miss what's coming. Alright, let's get into it. Number 1. Dates, the original energy bar. We start with the fruit the Bible mentions more than almost any other. The date palm shows up again and again in Scripture. Psalm chapter 92 says, "The righteous will flourish like the palm tree." It wasn't praised for being pretty. It was praised because it kept people alive. If you were a soldier, a trader, or a pilgrim crossing the ancient Middle East, dates were survival. Calorie-dense, naturally shelf-stable, and loaded with minerals. Here's what modern nutrition says. Dates deliver fast natural sugars, but unlike refined sugar, they arrive wrapped in fiber, potassium, magnesium, copper, and B vitamins. Research has even found that women who ate dates in the final weeks of pregnancy tended to have smoother labors. And the fiber and polyphenols are linked to better digestion and lower inflammation. The traditional use is almost embarrassingly simple. Eat 3 to 5 as a clean energy source, or use them to break a fast, which is exactly why Ramadan is traditionally broken with dates. The body takes them in gently after going without. Ancient fuel, still working today. Number 2. Figs, the prophet's poultice. Here's a detail most people miss. When King Hezekiah was dying from a severe infection, a boil or skin ulcer, the prophet Isaiah didn't only pray. He ordered a poultice of figs pressed onto the wound. That's 2 Kings chapter 20 verse 7. And Hezekiah recovered. Modern science finds that surprisingly reasonable. Figs contain an enzyme called physin that helps break down dead tissue, along with compounds that lab studies show have antimicrobial activity. Fig latex has been studied for exactly the kind of skin and wound applications Isaiah described. But figs aren't just for the skin. They're remarkably rich in soluble fiber, especially pectin, which feeds the beneficial bacteria in your gut. And they pack magnesium, potassium, calcium, and B vitamins at a density that made them, in a world without multivitamins, the multivitamin. Traditional use. Fresh figs at peak ripeness for gut health and energy. Dried figs year-round for steady nutrition. A food a prophet prescribed to a king, and one your body still recognizes. Number 3. Pomegranate. The temple fruit pomegranates mattered so much in the ancient world that they were embroidered onto the priestly garments in Exodus chapter 28, and 200 of them were carved onto the pillars of Solomon's temple. That's not decoration. That's a statement about what this fruit meant. And antioxidant science finds it fascinating. Pomegranates contain punicalagins, compounds found almost nowhere else in nature, which your gut converts into substances studied for their anti-inflammatory effects. Clinical trials have linked pomegranate juice to lower blood pressure, improved cholesterol behavior, and reduced markers of inflammation. Gram for gram, it outmeasures green tea and red wine on certain polyphenols. And the part most people throw away, the rind, is even more concentrated. Traditional healers across the Middle East steeped the dried rind as a tea for digestive trouble. Traditional use: eat the seeds fresh, drink the fresh pressed juice, or steep the dried rind. The whole fruit gives you the full spectrum, the way the body was built to receive it. Number 4. Lentils, the food of prophets and laborers. The Bible's most famous lentil moment is a warning. Esau trades his birthright for a bowl of red lentil stew in Genesis chapter 25. That sounds absurd, until you realize lentils weren't peasant scraps. They were survival food. Dense, filling, and storable for years. And they're nutritionally extraordinary. Lentils are one of the highest plant sources of protein, around 18 grams per cooked cup, alongside iron, folate, zinc, and magnesium. They have a famously low glycemic index, meaning steady energy without the spike and crash. Their fiber feeds your gut bacteria and is linked to lower cholesterol. And here's the longevity angle. Across the world's longest living communities, one of the most consistent habits researchers find is eating lots of legumes. Lentils are right at the center of that. Traditional preparation, soaking, then slow cooking with cumin and coriander, wasn't just flavor. Soaking reduces compounds that block mineral absorption, so the nutrition actually reaches you. Simple food. Quietly powerful. Number 5. Barley, the humble grain that beats the famous ones. Here's the one I teased. When Jesus fed the 5,000 in John chapter 6, those loaves were barley bread, the grain of ordinary people. And it turns out ordinary people were eating one of the most gut-friendly grains ever studied. Barley has the highest concentration of beta-glucan of any grain, a soluble fiber so convincingly shown to lower cholesterol and steady blood sugar that the FDA allows an official health claim about it on food labels. Almost no food earns that. Beta-glucan forms a gel in your gut that slows sugar absorption, lowers LDL cholesterol, and feeds your beneficial bacteria. Studies show it can outperform oats, already a heart-healthy favorite, on after-meal blood sugar. And it grows almost anywhere for almost nothing. Traditional use. Whole barley cooked as porridge or baked into flatbread. Whole barley keeps the most fiber, but even pearled barley is one of the best carbohydrate sources you can put on your plate. The poor man's grain, quietly outclassing the expensive ones. Number 6. Almonds. The food built into sacred design. When God instructed Moses to build the lampstand of the tabernacle, its cups were shaped like almond blossoms in Exodus chapter 25. And Aaron's rod miraculously budded with almonds in Numbers 17. The almond, the first tree to bloom in spring, was a symbol of watchfulness. It was also a nutritional powerhouse. Almonds are among the most nutrient-dense foods on earth, gram for gram. 1 ounce gives you over a third of your daily vitamin E, a fat-soluble antioxidant that protects your cells. They're rich in magnesium, a mineral a huge share of the modern population doesn't get enough of, and which supports hundreds of processes in your body. Clinical trials link regular almond eating to lower LDL cholesterol, gentler blood sugar response after meals, and a more diverse gut microbiome. Interestingly, studies show you don't even absorb all of their fat, some passes through and feeds your bacteria instead. Traditional use, raw or lightly roasted as a daily food, and pressed almond oil for skin and wound care. A near-perfect food, with sacred architecture built around its flower. Number 7. Pistachios, the nut of patriarchs. When Jacob sent his sons to Egypt during the famine in Genesis chapter 43, he told them to bring the finest gifts to impress the ruler, and pistachios made the list. Think about that. These weren't a cheap snack. They were treated as a treasure worthy of a king. And modern nutrition says Jacob had good taste. Pistachios are unusually high in lutein and zeaxanthin, carotenoids linked to protecting your eyes and your aging vision. They carry more potassium than most nuts, which supports healthy blood pressure, and they offer a strong amino acid profile for a plant food. But the standout is the gut angle. Studies show regular pistachio eating increases beneficial gut bacteria, particularly bifidobacteria, more than most other nuts tested. And like almonds, their structure means you absorb fewer calories than the label suggests, so they keep you full for less. Traditional use. Eaten simply, as the luxury food they always were. Jacob included them among his finest gifts, and the research suggests he knew exactly what he was doing. Number 8. Onions. The prebiotic king of the ancient kitchen. When the Israelites wept in the wilderness, longing for the food of Egypt in Numbers 11, onions were on the short list of what they missed so badly it made them cry. And if you understand what onions do, that grief makes sense. Onions are one of the richest dietary sources of quercetin, a polyphenol studied for anti-inflammatory and antihistamine effects, and linked in trials to lower blood pressure. But the bigger story is the prebiotic one. Onions are loaded with inulin-type fibers that specifically feed the friendly bacteria in your colon. Long before anyone had heard the word microbiome, the ancient world was instinctively building a diet that fed it well. The sulfur compounds also support your liver's natural detox enzymes, and raw onion has been used topically for centuries on bites and congested chests. Traditional use, raw in salads and pickles for maximum quercetin, cooked into nearly everything for flavor and fiber, and onion broth for recovery from illness. The people who mourned the onions of Egypt knew exactly what they were losing. Number 9. Garlic. The most studied food on this list, right beside the onions in that wilderness lament, was garlic. And here's the thing, garlic is one of the most comprehensively researched foods in all of nutritional medicine. When you crush or chop a clove, it produces allicin, a compound with broad antimicrobial activity studied against bacteria, viruses, and fungi. Clinical trials link regular garlic intake to fewer and milder colds, and to modest reductions in blood pressure and LDL cholesterol. It's been shown to reduce the tendency of blood to clump, and it has documented effects supporting the liver. The key detail: raw, freshly crushed garlic is most potent. Allicin is fragile and fades with heat, so the medicinal punch lives in the fresh clove, not the powder. Across the Mediterranean and Middle East, it was used every possible way: raw in dressings, cooked in stews, infused in oil. Egyptian medical papyri listed in over 20 preparations. Even the pyramid laborers were rationed garlic to keep their strength. Ancient people trusted it for a reason, and the modern evidence keeps backing them up. Number 10. Cumin, the spice Jesus named. This is the one spice on the list named directly by Jesus. In Matthew chapter 23, he criticizes the Pharisees for carefully tithing even cumin while neglecting justice and mercy. And notice, you only tithe things of real value. Cumin has been used as medicine for at least 4,000 years across the Middle East and India, and modern research keeps confirming the old uses. It contains cuminaldehyde, studied for antimicrobial activity against a range of bacteria and fungi. Trials suggest cumin can help lower fasting blood sugar and improve insulin sensitivity in people managing type 2 diabetes. It stimulates digestive enzymes, easing bloating and helping you absorb your food, and it's a meaningful source of iron, about a fifth of your daily need in a single teaspoon. Traditional use: ground into cooking, toasted into bread and stews, or steeped as a tea for digestive upset. In a biblical household, cumin was food and medicine at the same time, and Jesus referencing it wasn't random. Even the herb garden held real value. Number 11. Coriander, the herb hidden in manna. When God provided manna in the wilderness, Scripture describes it in Exodus chapter 16 as, like coriander seed, white. That places this little seed in the most miraculous food story in the entire Bible. Coriander seed, the dried fruit of the cilantro plant, has a long medicinal history across Egyptian, Persian, and Israelite cultures, and it was even found in Tutankhamun's tomb. Modern research finds genuine substance there. Studies point to anti-inflammatory compounds, antimicrobial activity, and well-supported digestive benefits. Coriander tea has been used for centuries for gas, bloating, and cramps, and research confirms it helps calm intestinal spasms. One of its more intriguing modern angles is in supporting the body's handling of heavy metals, though that research is still early, so I'll flag it as promising rather than proven. Traditional use: ground seed in bread and spice blends, coriander tea for digestion, and the fresh cilantro leaf used generously in cooking. It was everywhere in biblical kitchens, for the same reason it's everywhere in traditional cooking today. It made food taste good, and made people feel better after eating. Number 12. Hyssop. The purification herb with real chemistry, hyssop, runs through some of Scripture's most significant cleansing rituals. Psalm chapter 51 says, "Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean." It marked the doorposts at Passover in Exodus chapter 12, and a hyssop branch appears at the crucifixion in John chapter 19. For a long time, this was read as pure symbolism. Then researchers analyzed hyssop and found the symbolism was built on something physical. The plant contains carvacrol and thymol, the same antimicrobial compounds that make oregano and thyme such powerful natural antiseptics. Studies confirm genuine antibacterial, antiviral, and antifungal activity, and its expectorant compounds help clear the lungs. Suddenly the purification rituals make practical sense. If you were using hyssop to cleanse surfaces and people after illness, you were applying a real antimicrobial agent. The instructions worked, even before anyone could explain why. Traditional use: hyssop tea for coughs and bronchitis, a tincture as a topical antiseptic, and the fresh herb in cooking much like thyme. Dismissed for years as a decorative Bible herb, but it was doing real work. Number 13. Grapes, and the vine. From vine to vitality, the vine is one of the most spiritually loaded plants in all of Scripture. "I am the vine, you are the branches." John chapter 15. It appears at Noah's first planting after the flood, at the Passover table, and throughout the poetry of the Song of Solomon. This plant was central to ancient life, and for very good reason. Grapes, raisins, and grape juice all contain resveratrol, quercetin, and anthocyanins, polyphenols heavily studied for cardiovascular health, inflammation, and even longevity. Resveratrol in particular activates proteins tied to cellular repair, and it's been one of the most exciting compounds in aging research for 2 decades. The skin and seeds hold the highest concentration. A quick honest note: the cardiovascular research often centers on the polyphenols, not on alcohol. You can get them from whole grapes and juice, no wine required. Scripture itself treats wine as something to use carefully and sparingly, never in excess. Traditional use: fresh grapes in season, raisins year-round for portable energy, and grape leaves used in cooking, still a staple of Mediterranean tables today. Number 14. Fish, The omega-3 covenant fish is everywhere in the Gospels. The disciples were fishermen. The miraculous feedings centered on fish, and Jesus grilled fish on the shore in John chapter 21. In 1st century coastal Israel, fish was the main protein for most people, and it may have been one of the wisest dietary defaults in history. Fatty fish like the sardines and tilapia of the Sea of Galilee are among the richest sources of omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA, on the planet. These are essential fats your body can't make. DHA forms a major part of your brain's cell membranes. EPA has powerful anti-inflammatory effects. The research here is some of the strongest in all of nutrition, linking regular fish intake to better heart health, sharper cognition with age, and steadier mood. And the biblical preparation preserved all of it, simply grilled over charcoal, the way Jesus prepared it. No batter, no deep frying in processed oil that wipes out the omega-3s. Traditional use, 2 to 3 servings of fatty fish a week, cooked simply. They ate it because it's what they had. They happen to have one of the most health-promoting foods on earth. Number 15. Raw honey. The ancient antimicrobial eat honey for it is good, says Proverbs chapter 24. Song of Solomon calls it honey under the tongue. When Jonathan tasted honey in 1 Samuel chapter 14, scripture says his eyes brightened. The Bible consistently treats honey as a food that gives strength and life, and modern research backs the instinct. Raw honey is one of the most studied natural antimicrobials. Trials have shown it can kill certain antibiotic-resistant bacteria because it produces hydrogen peroxide on contact, sits at a low pH, and contains a protein called defensin-1 that actively attacks pathogens. A specific type, Manuka honey, is used in certified wound dressings in hospitals around the world today. But here's the load-bearing word: raw. The moment honey is heated and over-processed, you start destroying the very enzymes that make it medicinal. The clear, shelf-stable bottle is closer to sweet syrup than to what the ancients ate. Traditional use: raw honey on wounds, a spoonful at the first sign of a sore throat, and stirred into warm water with lemon for immune support. Archaeologists have even found 3,000-year-old honey in Egyptian tombs, still edible. It simply doesn't quit. Number 16. Olive oil, the liquid gold of the ancient world. Near the very top, the food that was the beginning of so much in the ancient world. Olive oil was food, fuel, medicine, and sacred substance all at once. The Bible references it over 100 times. Kings were anointed with it. Wounds were dressed with it. The Good Samaritan poured oil and wine into a stranger's wounds in Luke chapter 10. And that wasn't random. It was medicine. And modern science agrees emphatically. Extra virgin olive oil is one of the most rigorously studied foods on earth. The Mediterranean diet, built on it as a cornerstone, is linked in hundreds of trials to lower rates of heart disease and to healthier aging overall. A standout compound, oleocanthal, has been shown to act on inflammation through a pathway similar to ibuprofen. But here's the catch. Ancient olive oil wasn't the refined, heat-processed product on most shelves, often quietly cut with cheaper seed oils. Cold-pressed, unfiltered, genuinely extra virgin oil is a living food rich in antioxidants and vitamin E. Traditional use: a tablespoon of true extra virgin oil daily, used generously in cooking and applied to the skin. They poured this over everything, and they were right too. Number 17. Carob, the wilderness food of John the Baptist. And here we are at number 17. The one I saved for last, because it may be the most surprising story on the whole list. Scripture tells us John the Baptist lived in the wilderness on locusts and wild honey in Matthew chapter 3. But many scholars who know that landscape argue locusts here points not to insects, but to the pods of the carob tree, known across the ancient Middle East as locust beans, or St. John's bread. The carob tree grows wild exactly where John ministered, and its sweet pods have sustained desert travelers for thousands of years. Carob is roughly half natural sugar, but it comes packaged with extraordinary fiber, up to 40% by dry weight, which makes it a powerful gut regulator used traditionally for both diarrhea and constipation. It's naturally caffeine-free and rich in calcium, iron, and potassium. Here's the remarkable part. Carob contains tannins with documented anti-diarrheal activity, and carob powder was actually used in European hospitals to help children recover from digestive illness before modern medicine took over. So if John really lived on carob and wild honey, he wasn't suffering. He was thriving on two of the most resilient foods in the ancient world. 17 foods. Thousands of years of use. Centuries of quiet wisdom that we nearly threw away in the rush to replace everything natural with something manufactured. Here's what I want you to take from this. The people who wrote these ancient texts weren't primitive. They were observant. They paid attention to what healed them and what sustained them, And modern science, with all its clinical trials, keeps arriving at the same place. Olive oil calms inflammation. Honey fights bacteria. Barley supports the heart. Garlic supports the immune system. The food was the point. The healing was the point. But quality matters enormously here, and this is where most people go wrong. The difference between raw, living honey and the bear-shaped bottle of syrup is not small. The same goes for real cold-pressed olive oil, true whole grains, and every single food on this list. And one honest reminder, this is food and tradition, not a prescription. None of this replaces your doctor. It stands alongside good care, the way it always did. So drop a comment and tell me, which food surprised you most? Are you team olive oil, team raw honey, team the wilderness carob? I read every single one. If you haven't subscribed to Holy Remedy, hit that button now and ring the bell, because we're connecting ancient wisdom with modern science every week, and we are just getting started. Sometimes the most powerful medicine isn't in a pharmacy. Sometimes it's been on the table the whole time, just waiting for us to remember. See you in the next one.